Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney. That's Nick Zararis. And Nick, he's back. He's never been more back. Rangers legend, David Quinn, the Colin Blackwell over Alexei Lafreniere mastermind, back behind the Rangers bench, this time as an assistant coach with longtime Bruins assistant Joe Sacco and also Ty Hands, who was Team USA's assistant coach last year for the IIHF tourney, filling out the rest of the bench staff. Oh, he's never been more back, baby.
The funniest comments and generally speaking, the best comments when we're talking about shit posting and being funny are on Twitter, but the comment section on the Athletic article announcing the David Quinn hiring was genuinely some of the best conjecture I saw about this entire exercise. My favorite, of course, was, but you guys, you don't understand. They played college hockey together 45 years ago. They have to have David Quinn on the staff. My other favorite one was, this is like Entourage in the NHL. Mike Sullivan is the only one who's good at his job, and he brings his strap hanger friends everywhere he goes just to hang out because he needs his friends to be able to do his job well. Those were the two best takeaways I have for this. And look, assistant coach discourse in hockey matters very little. The input an assistant coach has in hockey is not like a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator in football. It is not like a pitching coach or a hitting coach. Those specialized traits, like, yeah, someone runs the power play, someone runs the kill, someone runs the defense. But by and large, these are guys to echo and channel Mike Sullivan's sentiments. If you want the glass half full perspective on David Quinn, the Penguins power play went from like 28th to 7th the one year he was their power play assistant. If you want the downside, the Penguins were never higher than 24th. I think the Penguins were like 28th or 29th in high danger chances against last year. The Sharks were 29th, 24th, and then the Rangers on average for the 3 years finished as the 30th team in the entire NHL in high danger chances against with David Quinn as the coach. And that's a team that, of course, largely featured the components of a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals. Adam Fox, K'Andre Miller, Jacob Trouba. Of course, Miller was only there the last year, ditto Braden Schneider, but he had the top four of a team that went to the Stanley Cup Final in 2019-2020, plus Tony DeAngelo, who was still driving offense to some degree that year, in the corpse of Mark Stahl and Brendan Smith. And, you know, Brendan Smith hung around for another 5 NHL seasons after his last year as a Ranger. Mark Stahl hung around for another 2.5 or 3, and David Quinn couldn't even get not even average, not even bad. He got the worst results in the entire league. He had worse defensive results than the Sabres, the Sharks, the Senators, the Red Wings, truly awful teams. And I think a lot of us, and the thing that always irked me about David Quinn was how he talked to us like he was doing us a favor, that like, oh, well, I know what I'm doing. I got this job. And at the same time, yes, you got this job. But at the same time, you had Jack Eichel and you didn't win anything in college. Like, do you understand how bad you have to be to have the consensus best player in college hockey and not win anything of note with him? I mean, every now and then, that's another thing I consistently see in the replies of anything about David Quinn is BU alums saying he was a miserable coach, that you had Jack Eichel, you had Charlie McAvoy, and you couldn't win anything, and we're supposed to be impressed. I mean, you look at the results in San Jose, you look at the defensive results in Pittsburgh this past year, and you look at the 3 years as Rangers head coach, and there's nothing David Quinn has done as a coach other than being friends with the right people that enables him to keep getting these jobs. That's really the end of the day. Like, does it matter a whole lot in the grand scheme of things? Probably not. But again, it is indicative of Chris Drury only trusting Chris Drury guys. It's only Chris Drury guys who can be here.
If you listen to the show, you know exactly how we feel about David Quinn. Like, there's nothing else that we can say that
is new,
would be new, you know, that we would bring to the table, but we haven't talked about David Quinn in a while, and obviously he's in the news, so, you know, it's worth bringing up. Yeah, there's his resume at the college level and the NHL level doesn't scream, you know, David Carl. Like, David Carl has won at every level, and he has multiple calls from NHL teams every offseason. Every time someone fires a coach, the first name that comes up is David Carl. Why? Because he wins. He's successful at every level. Not only that, like, the players that he coaches end up doing well, and like everybody loves him. On top of his success on the ice with his teams, he's from my understanding, a great coach and also a great person off the ice as well. everybody wants David Carl. He's a winner. People seem to want David Quinn
because he's friends with
he's friends with people, as opposed to him being a winner. Like he didn't win in college, and again,
they didn't win at the Olympics with him as the coach,
right? Well, yeah, that's a whole different conversation. But like I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying that the end all be all for a good head coach is to win all of the time. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, as we all know, it's very difficult to win in any league, right? Like winning it all is not easy to do. But a lot of the context surrounding those losses matter. You're coaching a college team with Jack Eichel and Jack McAvoy. You didn't get it done, and people that watched you every night as fans of the university, they didn't like your particular style. They didn't think, you maximize potential for those guys. Then you come to New York and then you play Colin Blackwell over Alexis Lafreniere, the number 1 overall pick in his rookie season. You're saying, nah, bro, we got to win hockey games. Colin Blackwell, clearly the better player. So you're giving him top 6 minutes while letting Lafreniere toil away in the third line. Then you go to San Jose, and that team is an abomination of human, like people that are essentially off the street. Like those rosters were really bad, and that's I don't want to disparage anybody on that roster, but like that roster in and of itself was awful. So yeah, how much of that was on David Quinn versus how much of that was people like that roster just being just one of the worst in NHL history? I mean, it's both, right? Like you can't be losing games. You can't be, they gave up 10 goals multiple times in that season. Like that's, you got to try. You got to try to do that. That's really bad. And then you get to Pittsburgh where, you don't have that roster anymore. And yet you play like you do defensively, where like no one knows what their assignment is. No one knows what the other person's doing. Like it was equally as bad, despite the roster being, at least on paper, a hell of a lot better than it was in San Jose. And now he's back. And, again, it's an assistant coach thing. It's not going to make or break anything to an extreme degree. But I continue to, like you said, Drury's hiring his friends and Mike Sullivan's hiring his friends. And to a certain extent, that's all fine and dandy. But what has David Quinn accomplished that allows him?
You don't understand, Andrew. They played college hockey together 40 years ago.
Yeah,
you don't get it. There are only 60 white guys in the entire world capable of coaching of any level in the NHL. That's it. There's only 60 guys at a given time. 5 have to die for 5 new ones to come into the mix. That's how this works. Okay, unless you have
there's a specific quota cap. There's 60 people, and that's it.
Hey, man, they got Joel Quenneville back rather than bring someone else into the mix. Yeah, they tried to bring Mike Babcock back rather than to bring someone new into the mix. It's crazy because, like, what do you think that conversation was like? Chris Drury obviously sat down across from David Quinn 4 years ago and said, sorry, bud, hit the road. And then we have to pretend that this is all fine and dandy. I mean, on a similar, it's not the same exact vein as the Trouba stuff from last summer, but pretending everyone's just going to be cool about this is, again, it's a little misguided. Pretending everything is just, well, Mike Sullivan's here now. He's the buffer. It won't be like it was when David Quinn was the coach. Okay. So what's exactly changed in the 4 years since David Quinn was the coach? A lot of guys got older. No one of note got particularly better. And now you ask, well, what's David Quinn's responsibilities? Do we have to worry about this? And look, assistant coaches, they only matter if the team is good or bad. Generally, if the team is average, we're not talking a whole lot about special teams coaches or position group coaches. Like 2 years ago when they won the President's Trophy, it's, Dan Muse is teaching them all these tricks to win faceoffs after being a terrible faceoff team for all these years. And, they're talking so much about how great a job Phil Housley's doing with Keandre Miller, the steps he's taken this year. It's only if the team is really good or if the team is atrocious. We talked ad nauseum the year and a half that Lindy Ruff was a David Quinn assistant about how bad the defense was because it was atrocious and because Lindy Ruff was in charge of the defense. So if the team is average, I don't think we're going to talk a whole lot about David Quinn next year. If the team is really good,
Hopefully.
If the team is really good, we'll talk about, oh, well, they exceeded expectations because of X, Y, and Z. Or if the defense is still bad, which I think there's a strong argument the defense very well might be bad, we get to have the conversation of, well, why did they hire David Quinn in the first place when they had 3 years of hand-on experience? And look, I will eventually workshop this argument and this talking point a little bit better, but I just thought of it now while I think there's a strong argument that defense David Quinn had in 2021 is better than the defense the Rangers are going to walk into opening night next year. Obviously that's Adam Fox winning the Norris Trophy year. You have rookie K'Andre Miller, rookie Braden Schneider, 2 years in of Lindgren, third year of Trouba as a Ranger, and then Anthony Bitetto / Jack Johnson / whomstever was that sixth guy on a rotating basis that season.
Sweeping the corners.
But I think there's a strong argument that group is better than the Rangers group right now. And we're going to start talking. Today's episode is mostly going to hone in on free agency. But this defensive group is pretty much signed. They have 7 defensemen under team control when you include Adam Fox, who's a restricted free agent right now, and K'Andre Miller, who's also a restricted free agent. How are they supposed to improve defensively if everybody's coming back? And they probably are going to be a very similar group to what they were last year, because again, what makes it Mike Sullivan, and we talked about this specifically on last week's show, the idea that, well, they need to forecheck really well. Otherwise, it puts their defenders on islands. And that's why the Penguins were so bad defensively the last 2 or 3 years, is the Penguins just didn't have the foot speed to run an effective forecheck the way Mike Sullivan wants to. And we know the Rangers don't. We know the Rangers are a slow hockey team. We've been saying that for 2.5 years. The year they won the President's Trophy, we said this is a really slow hockey team. And eventually that's going to become a problem. And they played the fastest team in the NHL in the conference finals. And you saw the speed difference between Florida and the Rangers. And that was one of the many components of their eventual undoing in that series, that at one point they led 2-1, including a win on road ice, which was a really, oh, we can do this type feeling when Alex Wenberg scores that goal in overtime of Game 3.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not as if the assistant coaches tend in the NHL to move the needle drastically. It's one of those things where assistant coaches may or may not make a team, but they can definitely break it. And that's one of the biggest concerns that I have with hiring David Quinn is based on his resume, which by this point is pretty extensive. He's had 4 NHL stops when you include assistantships. He's been around the league for a while. He's coached, in
4 nations, the Olympics,
college, in the international tourneys and in the NHL. He's coached. He's been around. And none of the teams he's coached have found any success.
You know what's crazy? I saw someone in that article in the comments trying to defend David Quinn, and they were like, they didn't give him a good team. He somehow made the playoffs. And the reply I left was, it took a once-in-a-century pandemic for David Quinn to make the playoffs one time. Are we really that accomplished that they got swept in 3 games? The only team in that qualifying round that got swept out of everybody in a playoffs that included the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Arizona Coyotes. Are we supposed to be happy they got swept by a Hurricanes team that wasn't that good? The Rangers beat that Hurricanes team, if I remember correctly, 3 out of 4 times in the regular season. And then in the playoffs, they got swept in 3 games. It's just, I'll never get it on some level, just the team can't be wrong, the team can't be wrong. But we sit here now and we know everybody's in agreement things need to change. The mechanics of actually making things change, Andrew, are going to be a lot more difficult than we would like it to be. I know Arthur tweeted yesterday that at the Combine, the talk of the Combine is that the Rangers are willing to trade everybody. That's not Panarin, Fox, or Shesterkin.
Where have we heard that before?
Yeah,
I just at a certain point, it's show me, don't tell me. I'm so sick of hearing the same thing every year. The Rangers are going to be busy. We bring this up. I'll bring it up again. The reporting from everybody at the draft last season, where the Rangers are trading Jacob Trouba to the Detroit Red Wings.
Expected by the end of the day.
They're doing it today. This is happening. This is going to happen. This is happening. This might happen. This isn't happening. That was never going to happen. What are you talking about? Like that was the most. That was the
4 years to trade for JT Miller. Yeah. They were talking about this in 2021.
4 years,
and it took 4 years to get JT Miller back in Rangers jersey.
I'll believe it when I see it. I'm so over hearing the same. The Rangers are going to be aggressive, whatever. Until I see it, I don't believe it. Like I'm just over it. Like the Rangers know that they have to be aggressive. Clearly, they know that. But until you show that to me, until you fundamentally make actual, changes that will change the dynamic of this roster, and I'm not talking about trading a 7th round pick for, the 14th forward on, or I guess in this case, the 19th forward on this team. But like, unless you make tangible changes that lead to tangible results, I don't want to hear it anymore.
Again, the Rangers do this. This has been consistently during the Drury tenure. Is the first 2 weeks of the offseason, you get the big leak. After they lost to the Devils series, it was, they would trade Panarin if they could find a way to do it 2 weeks after losing that series. Last year, it was, things can't be the same. They waived Barclay Goodrow. Things are going to be different this year. And then you get the Trouba fiasco that drags into December of last year from June. It's hard for me to take anything the general manager or frankly the team at large says at face value. And of course, it's not in their interest to talk at face value with the public because that only hurts or imperils their negotiating position. But at
Jim Rutherford.
Jim Rutherford is just costing the Canucks so much. Not just tangibly, like in terms of results, but just like in terms of credibility and respect to just constantly be popping off for no reason other than you like to talk, which, like, believe me, I do 3 podcasts. I understand liking to talk. But there's a degree of professionalism required and discretion required to have that type of job that just at this point he doesn't have. But tying a bow on this before we start talking about free agents and trade candidates, what have you, we still got 2 more weeks of this where it's going to be, we'll see what the Rangers are going to do. And don't be surprised if Team X offer sheets player Y. And again, with offer sheets, I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah. It was very funny. Larry Brooks wrote that column like 2 weeks ago. Like, what are the Rangers going to do if the Calgary Flames offer sheet Matt Rempe and take the 4th round pick?
Yeah.
Like, what are we what's the conversation? If the 12th forward gets offer sheeted, you take the draft pick and move along. Like, this is not rocket science. It is not. At some point, something needs to change. We can't keep running back the same team over and over again, changing one forward and saying, damn, I wonder why it's not working. And at a certain point, man, teams and executives are what they are. It's great they got Mike Sullivan. I think Mike Sullivan is still a decent hockey coach. A decent hockey coach is not the difference between what the Rangers are right now and what the Oilers and the Panthers are right now. And that's where I want to start to transition this conversation towards talking about free agency, trades, the draft. So I forget who wrote the column. I think it was Staple wrote a column like, this is what the Rangers can learn from the Stanley Cup final. And it was such passive voice laden nonsense about the Rangers cap position being bad, even though the general manager is the one who got the cap position where it is right now. The big takeaway from looking at the Oilers and looking at the Panthers is not shopping in the deep end of free agency. It is Oliver Ekman-Larsson. It is Nate Schmidt. It is Nico Mikkola. It is Corey Perry. It is Jeff Skinner to some extent. It is Victor Arvidsson. It's trading for depressed assets like a Vasily Podkolzin. It is getting specialized skill sets like a Jake Wallman. You look at the way the Oilers and the Panthers have largely developed the depths of their team. The Panthers last year won the Cup. I think 3 guys they drafted on the entire team were guys they originally drafted. You think about how Evan Rodriguez has found success there, betting on guys like Sam Bennett and Sam Reinhart. Unfortunately, we're betting on Will Borgen and Urho Vakanainen, but that's your goal. You want to be betting on depressed assets that aren't going to cost a lot, that have room to rise. And, the Rangers have 2 of those in Will Cooley and K'Andre Miller. Will Cooley's not a depressed asset, but a cost-efficient asset in his case. And then Miller is a depressed asset.
Yeah.
There is room to squeeze excess value out of that. but we have to trade him because he's inconsistent, like anyone on this team is ever consistent. But again, talking about it from that perspective, you look at the Panthers, you look at the Oilers, you go into that shallow end of free agency where we're talking about 1-year deals and league minimums, no trade protections, no movements. This is you should be happy to be in the NHL contract. That's how good teams fill out the bottom half of their lineups. Yeah. You look at the Stars with guys like Evgeny Dadonov, who have 20-goal seasons under their belts, who rotate in and out, who aren't good enough on a consistent basis to stay in the lineup. AJ Greer has 3 goals in these playoffs, and he is yet to play in the Stanley Cup final. When you have depth like that, you're not arguing about, well, this guy should be in over that guy. It's, we have so many guys, we don't know who to pick.
Yeah.
And that's because the Panthers and the Oilers and the Stars and these well-run teams, even to some extent the Hurricanes, they go into the bargain bin of free agency and say, we're going to fill out 2 or 3 spots. We're not going to be tied up with these guys for 3, 4, 5 years. We can get rid of them at a moment's notice because they're cheap. We can either bury them in the AHL or just throw them on waivers. They don't get no trade protection. They don't get no movement protection. And because we're going to put them next to good players, we can squeeze even more value out of them. If we sign Shane Gostisbehere for the Hurricanes and we put him next to Dmitry Orlov, he's going to be even better. If we, as the Oilers, claim Kasperi Kapanen off of waivers, and we play him next to Leon Draisaitl, he's going to be even better. The Rangers don't look at free agency like that. The Rangers look at free agency as, we have a gaping hole in our lineup. We need a top 6 forward. Let's go get Brad Marchand and give him 4 years at $8 million per year and give him a no movement clause, ages 37, 38, 39, 40, because he's won Stanley Cups and he's a great leader and he's going to teach us how to win. We always make the joke, and I'll throw it back to you on this note. Do you think Barclay Goodrow taught the Rangers how to win the Stanley Cup by showing them his rings? Because that's the extent of his expertise.
By the way, what did he do in San Jose this year besides being
the worst player in the NHL?
Statistically, the worst player in the sport. And this is, by the way, and again, like, I'm sure Barclay Goodrow, great friend, great.
You think he knows magic tricks? Is that why teams keep bringing him in?
Maybe he was teaching me because Zibanejad had to juggle. I don't know. But like, Barclay Goodrow was the worst player in the sport all of last season. Yep. This is the guy that the entire roster was pouting about. And, you know, like, I understand that people like him and he's a good locker room guy and all that. Like, I get that.
And the crazy part about that is, real quick, is like, teams don't even give a shit when it's convenient. Teams will bring in Corey Perry and Evander Kane and Sam Bennett. Teams will bring in pieces of shit people if they can win games. They don't care. And that's why whenever the Rangers are like, they try so hard, they work so hard, it's such empty nonsense. Because as soon as it's convenient, you will bring in a bad person. So I hate that argument too.
Yeah, I mean, is the goal of professional sports to build friendship teams and like friendship and make friendship bracelets, or is it to win games? Because, you know, I'm so over the notion from whether that be general managers or writers or, you know, whoever, some fans, the idea that, oh, you know, this guy's good in the locker room. Yet hire him as a player development guy. Don't put him on the ice.
Sorry, man. Tanner Glass needs a job.
Is player X good on the ice or is he bad on the ice? That is all I personally care about. And yeah, it's better for sure to have people in the locker room that, you know, people get along with than, you know,
the Rangers have won Tony DeAngelo for 3 years. They don't give a shit.
Again, I want to bring this up. Michael Jordan was not everybody's friend. Kobe Bryant was not everybody's friend. Those two people were psychopaths that had a lot of enemies because of how badly they wanted to win games. Like, they made fun of their teammates constantly. They were direct adversaries with people on their team because they felt like whoever it is that they were going up against did not care about winning as much as they did constantly. So I don't it doesn't have to be hunky-dory in the locker room. If you have a group of 18 individuals that will stop at nothing to win hockey games, I don't care if you go for dinner afterwards. And you shouldn't either. It's nice, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Yeah, that's all. That's great. If you're friends with your teammates and you go and you have dinners and and Thanksgiving together, that's awesome. That's awesome. However, if you're having Thanksgiving dinner talking about how amazing Barclay Goodrow or or insert 13th forward here, while you lost your last game 7-2 and you're at the bottom of the standings, I don't care. This team is built to win hockey games, allegedly. Allegedly. So you can't be talking to me with a straight face about, this is such a good locker room guy. People like this guy. Save me. Please just spare me, save me. I don't need it. Either win or find other players that will win. That should be priority number one. This is professional sports. We're not making friendship bracelets around here. You got to win games.
You didn't hear a whole lot about the Rangers' famous dinner to Nona Trocheck's house last year when the Rangers went to Pittsburgh, did you? When they were a bad hockey team, did you? Right. No, you didn't. When they were winning, they go to Trocheck's grandma's house and she cooks dinner for the whole team and it's such a great time. You know what happens? Teams that win like playing with each other and they grow closer and people want to stay and they take less money to stay when they like what's going on around them. Winning is the greatest cure-all. Just adding pieces in does not materially change things. So on that note, pivoting the conversation a little more directly towards free agency itself. And we did a bit of this exercise 2 weeks ago where we talked about trade candidates, free agent signings, but this is more of just a top-down view of the class. And the biggest takeaway is there is one genuine superstar. There's 4 or 5 pretty good guys. And then there's a whole lot of nothing. Once you get past Nick Ehlers, it gets really weak really fast. I like Brock Besser. Brock Besser is not materially changing anything for the New York Rangers. No. Ivan Provorov, Brock Nelson signed already, but Matt Duchene, I think as a replacement for someone you get rid of, sure, but as an addition to put them over the top. Now, this free agency class, you get to 12 and we're talking about Ryan Donato and Pia Suter.
I want to highlight, by the way, and we're looking at the Athletic top 50 list right now, that the top 17 free agent is Ryan Lindgren, famous, Rangers legend. 18 is Patrick Kane. 19 is Jonathan Toews, who hasn't played pro hockey or any hockey for multiple years now. And number 20 is Claude Giroux. Wait, hold on a second. You mean to tell me with a straight face that Jonathan Toews, years removed from any professional hockey experience in any capacity, is currently a better free agent than Claude Giroux? I understand he's 37 and he's not the player that he once was and all these things. Jonathan Toews now better than Claude Giroux now? Huh? I just wanted to highlight that because that is an insane thing.
I assume the conjecture is that Giroux's just not leaving Ottawa, and that's why he's not a highly sought free agent. That would be the
regardless. But Jonathan Toews is higher than Jimmy Benn. Yeah. Again, I understand Jimmy Benn, not the player that he was a few years ago. Jonathan Toews has not played professional hockey in multiple years. How is he number 19? Anyway.
But yeah, so at large, Marner is going to probably leave. And I don't think Marner would make sense for the Rangers on a number of levels. I think he's too expensive for where they're at.
Yeah.
I think Chris Drury looks at him and sees everything he dislikes in contemporary hockey. I think they very much could have tried to find a way to get in on that conversation last year, as opposed to JT Miller when Marner was supposedly, not really being shopped, but the Leafs were at least considering the possibility. I don't think that makes sense. I don't think Sam Bennett makes sense. No. I don't think Brad Marchand makes sense. I don't think Nick Ehlers makes sense. I really don't think any of these free agents really fit the Rangers' price point because they just don't have the money, and B, they don't really fit what the Rangers are looking for. Yes, Is Sam Bennett a good hockey player? Yes. Is Brad Marchand? Is Ehlers? Is Tavares? Yes. These are all still good hockey players. Like, anyone who signs them is making their roster better. But I don't think adding pieces like a Sam Bennett or a Tavares or an Ehlers or a Marchand is going to fundamentally get the Rangers where they want to. It is not just a talent problem. It is a execution of the talent. It's, we know this guy is good, but can we get him to do what he's good at? And we have seen the Rangers time and time again mess that up. They identified something in a player. Like, think about Nico Mikkola. They identified something they like there. He's big and he skates well. He didn't really play poorly as a Ranger, but it wasn't notable. It wasn't impressive. And then you see what he's done in Florida the last 2 years, and you squint and rub your eyes, and this is the same guy who couldn't play over Miller or Lindgren 2 years ago against the Devils. Like, there's clearly a disconnect there in terms of your pro scouting, your pro personnel, and your actual execution. I mean, we can do this with free agents too, where they've looked at guys they've signed and they've had a decent run with the bargain bin guys like Gustafsson, Quick, even Blake Wheeler, even though I thought that was a bad signing and he wasn't that effective. It wasn't offensively bad. He wasn't a terrible player, but he just wasn't really that useful. But as soon as they venture out into anything that costs a little bit of money, they just spend money like it's infinite. Like, they really do. They burned like $9 million in cap space on Will Borgen, Urho Vakanainen, and Parsonen. Like, what? What?
For no reasons. Like, there's no reason to do that. And yet they decide to do, like, it's really funny how, you know, the current Rangers management with you know, Drury and everybody else have put the Rangers in this cap situation and are now looking around saying, who did this? Huh? Oh, that was me?
It's Tim Robinson. It's Tim Robinson in the hot dog suit.
It's like, dog, you did.
For nothing, too. Like, you tried to stop the bleeding in season last year, and you arguably made the cap position worse. Yeah. There's a strong argument they made the roster worse and the cap situation worse. Right. Like, again, I have said this at least 10 times since they traded for JT Miller. They added a point per game forward to this team, and they went under 500 down the stretch. They added a guy who scored a point on average in every game since he arrived. The first game of February was the first one he played, that game against the Bruins. And they were under 500. They got actively worse defensively once they added the best forward or second best forward to be on the team this past season. I don't think people understand just how bad they were last year in that context. Everyone keeps looking at, they were only 4 points back of a playoff spot. They don't need that much to go right for them next year if they want to make the playoffs again. The goal is not to make the playoffs. The goal is to win the Stanley Cup. You have the best goalie in the world, and you have one of the 5 best defensemen in the world. If you can't figure out how to make this team at least final 8 good, you're not good at your job. Like, just straight up, you drop Shesterkin and Fox onto most teams, that's enough. Most teams, that's enough to get them in the door. And the Rangers had more than that. They had a former 50-goal scorer. They had a former 100-point scorer. They had 2 former 100-point scorers once you added JT Miller. Zibanejad has been a point-per-game player. Trocheck has been a point-per-game player. Lafreniere has been close to a point-per-game player. You have a Norris Trophy winner. You have 2 former first-round pick defensemen, and you still weren't good enough.
That's the crux of it. How much more do you need in order to even just make the playoffs? And that shouldn't be the goal. But like, if you're the Rangers, you're 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup final. The goal the next season is, hey, can we make the playoffs? Hey, can we maybe win the first round? Like, the goal is, okay, we were 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup final. What do we have to do? What do we have to change in order to make that happen? I guess for the Rangers, the answer was absolutely nothing. We're going to.
It was Riley Smith for Blake Wheeler.
Yeah, that was it. That was. And by the way, like, on paper, we talked about it at the time. Like, on paper, the team was better.
It was.
But
because you had Hedel in the Wenberg spot.
Right.
You were going to run back the kid line, and you were going to drop Riley Smith in the Blake Wheeler spot. Trocheck, Panarin, Lafreniere was the second best line in the entire NHL last year. And the fourth line with Edstrom, Vesey, and Rempe was better than the opening night fourth line the year before. Everything was there for them to be better last year, and it just never materialized.
No. They had a good 10 games in the beginning of the season where they looked really good. This was like this actually can work. And then everything collapsed. It's like there's never going to be a 30 for 30 on this because hockey media will never cover anything remotely controversial. I want to find out if there's any one particular thing that led to that, whether that be the Trouba thing, the Barclay Goodrow thing, but that rings hollow to me as well, because if you were still big mad about Goodrow and big mad about Trouba maybe being traded, then you wouldn't have started so well. You can't start really well, pretend that everything is full systems go, everything is hunky dory, and then in late November, early December, when you're losing every single game, very pathetically, now it's they're mad about Barclay Goodrow. What, dog? Come on, you mean to tell me that they forgot about that for the first 6 weeks, and then they were like, oh wait, but Barclay Goodrow's not here. Oh wait, but Trouba was supposed to be a Red Wing. Oh no, we're gonna stop playing hockey now. Come on, man. I'm very, it's never gonna happen, but I'm very curious to find out if. And I'm not saying there was for sure, but if you use context clues and you kind of try to figure out read between the tea leaves here, something surely was a catalyst behind
something was a mess.
The team utterly collapsing. It was almost sudden too. It was pretty sudden. It was pretty dramatic. And that West Coast trip, that's what started it all. They went on that West Coast trip and they lost that really bad game to Calgary, and that stretch of games where they just looked like they didn't want to be there. And they never kind of looked like they wanted to be on the ice after that. I'm very curious as to if anything happened in that time sphere, but yeah. And it just goes back to the whole point of it's okay to not be friends with your teammates as long as everybody's on the same page about how much they want to win. Kobe didn't invite the whole team to his grandma's house for Thanksgiving, but Kobe made his teammates better and they won multiple championships as a result. So I think I'll take number 2 as opposed to option number 1.
In talking about free, am I really supposed to be that excited about Vladislav Gavrikov or Ivan Provorov as the Ryan Lindgren replacement to play with Adam Fox? These are both guys approaching 30. Provorov has never actually been that good at defense. He skates well and he's big, but he doesn't actually really shut things down in transition. His first outlet pass isn't good. He's complained a lot over the years about not being featured as the number one defenseman on teams. And in Philadelphia, that was a reasonable complaint at points, but you're on the same team as Zach Werenski, maybe be a little realistic here. And you know what's really funny talking about that? I saw someone the other day talking about this. They were talking about how Josh Hart was really honest that he felt he didn't play that well in the Pacers series and he didn't do his job well enough. And he's like, did we ever hear Jacob Trouba say, I didn't play well enough tonight? Did we ever hear Ryan Lindgren say, I wasn't good enough? It was always, we didn't get the breaks, or we just got to execute better. We got to try harder. Yeah. As if trying harder makes up for not being good. And does it matter a whole lot in the grand scheme of things? No. It's just nice to be intellectually honest and not be condescended to. At a certain point, it just becomes a frustrating exercise. As much as I love the Rangers, at a certain point, this becomes a waste of energy and time when they constantly disrespect your intelligence, when they tell you things like Peter Laviolette saying, we can't play Perreault and Othman. They have to learn. They have to sit with the coaches who aren't going to be here next year because I'm getting fired. And I haven't talked to the general manager in a month, so I know I'm getting fired, but I'm going to keep coaching like I'm going to be running training camp in September. So you got to, at a certain point, for the sake of your sanity, give yourself the room to say, I can't get mad about this. I can. Because, like, we're going to do an episode whenever free agency opens on July 1st at some point that day. And we'll talk about, well, they added player X, they added player Y. Like, even if it is Gavrikov, who supposedly, who was mentioned by name in the Staple report, which I always err on the side of caution whenever a player's named specifically, because that's usually an agent trying to drive up the price, the bidding price. When a player's name is mentioned by name with a specific team, that's the Gavrikov's agent saying, yeah, we'd go to the Rangers so that, the Hurricanes will up their offer. So the Leafs will up their offer. But like Gavrikov, I do think this is a good point. I can tie back to what I was saying before. He's not a bad hockey player, but the Rangers don't play team defense the way the Kings do. The Kings are arguably the best defensive team in the entire NHL, because their forward group is so committed to great defense that their defensemen don't have to do a lot. They don't ask their defensemen to do a whole lot because they're 9 forwards deep. They get great results from pretty much everyone they play up front. Their defense doesn't have to do a whole lot. They have above average goaltending. And this past year, nothing from Gavrikov's profile says number one defenseman. I mean, he's tall. He skates okay.
Nick, he's big. Yeah. Nick, he's tall. He's big.
NHL free agency and Hinge are the same thing. 6 foot, you're cooking. Yeah. If you're 6 foot, you're going to be the belle of the ball in free agency. And we'll see how the Stanley Cup final impacts that. I know if the Panthers win again, we'll get to relitigate the big defenseman discourse again, because they generally have a pretty big physical defensive group in terms of their size.
I wonder which team is going to massively overpay for Aaron Ekblad after also he's lost his top defenseman role because he doesn't have it.
Seth Jones is also just better. And I think that Seth Jones trade was very consciously like, this is the Ekblad replacement.
Yeah. 100%.
And you'll see, and you see Florida has consistently rotated the bottom pair guys. Last year it was OEL and Kulikov. This year it's Schmidt and Kulikov. They're still pretty good. They found Mikkola, who's been playing with Ekblad, who's been pretty good. They'll find an Ekblad replacement. They'll find someone
for cheaper than what Ekblad would want anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other part of it. And like, again, that gets back to what I was saying before about the Oilers and the Panthers. Like, they shop very deliberately in free agency for specialized targeted roles or just outright depressed assets for whatever reason that they're not expensive. The Rangers don't do that.
The thing about Bill Zito too, that needs to be highlighted in all of this, is that he doesn't cling on to players until it's too late. He had Jonathan Huberdeau, who had 1 million points, and he was like, no.
He was third in Hart Trophy voting the year they traded him.
He said, if we want to win the Stanley Cup, I have to trade the best player on this team in order for us to get better. And you know what? He did that, and guess what happened?
And Mackenzie Weegar, for that matter, who's also a really good defenseman.
Right. The thing, and Aaron Ekblad, I know Bill Zito himself didn't draft Aaron Ekblad, but he has been a Florida Panther since day one. He was the first overall pick, right? The second overall pick?
First overall pick in 14. Yeah.
Right. He's been there for over a decade. This has been a Florida Panther, true and true. But Seth Jones is a better fit. And Aaron Ekblad is going to want too much money. So Bill Zito said, okay, instead of giving Aaron Ekblad the lifetime contract because he's been here forever, I am going to find somebody that can play his role with, I don't know that's exact number on top of my head, but like, I think Seth Jones makes, a little bit more money than Ekblad does right now. Find someone who makes a little bit more, but is better at the things that we need from that role. And Aaron Ekblad, unfortunately, because he's a free agent, is going to want too much money for the things that he brings to the table. We are going to have to let him go. That mentality wins you championships. The idea of, yes, this is our guy and we love him and he's been here forever, but he's not the key component to us being championship, caliber in the future. So we are going to have to make the difficult decision of letting him go or trading him or whatever in favor of somebody else of a similar capacity who is slightly better or much better at the specific things that we need for maybe marginally more money or maybe even less money than what player X currently wants. And that's what the Panthers are doing, and it's working out really well. Loyalty is great, and the Panthers do reward their guys, but in situations like this, when it's the hard decision, but it's the correct decision, Bill Zito has done a really good job of that, and he deserves credit for it.
For sure. And I think you saw it with OEL last year. Like, they probably could have found a way to keep him a Panther for another year or two. They looked around and said, we get Nate Schmidt for $800,000, or we can try and get into the OEL bidding war. And they took Nate Schmidt for less than $1 million a season. Right. And he's been really good for them. And it's really an essential idea. And look, you're not going to find a first pair left defenseman in free agency. They don't get there. Good ones, at least. Part of the reason guys get to free agency is because their teams determined the headaches they would have to make to keep them weren't worth it. When a player gets there, for the most part, it's a middle six guy or a second pair guy from a good team that can't afford to keep them. Because if that guy was worth keeping, they would have found a way to keep them. You think about the way some teams like Tampa Bay have aggressively done that, where they've pick and choose. Like, they let Killorn and Palat walk because they needed to create more space. But at the same time, they realized, hey, we can get Brandon Hagel. And Brandon Hagel was like 5th in even strength points in the entire NHL this year. You have to find ways to create space for the important pieces. And free agency, I always say, is grocery shopping hungry. You can talk yourself into anything when you're there because you feel like you need to leave with something. And it creates the feeding frenzy that it makes for great television. It's exciting to follow and keep track of. But in terms of actually building a good team, you're not building a team in free agency. You're refining or fine-tooling a team in free agency. And until the Rangers start looking at it with that approach, they're going to keep running into these issues. And they did it to themselves a lot with guys they kept. They were bidding against themselves for Will Borgen and Parssinen and Vakanainen. Like, would Parssinen have even gotten a qualifying offer, let alone, a contract from another team? He was healthy scratched by the Avalanche and the Predators last year. And the Rangers needed to give him a 2-year deal after not playing him for 2 months. Like, Borgen, you're telling me there was going to be a bidding frenzy for Will Borgen the first hour of free agency on July 1st? That had to be taken care of.
And if there was, you let him go.
Yeah, the value, and it's always going to be fighting an uphill battle because people are always going to pick their side based on what they feel overarching, and it creates the echo chamber feedback of, well, I only talk to people who agree with it or heard it, whatever. At a certain point, man, this just becomes tiresome. Like, Borgen's not that good. If he was, the Kraken wouldn't have gotten rid of him. Vakanainen would still be a Duck if he was useful. Parssinen would still be a Predator or an Avalanche player if they were useful. And yes, to some degree, you got to gamble on guys. We said that before about Reinhart and Bennett and Brandon Montour, who was on the team last year, not this year, obviously. But like, the Rangers are gambling on like crappy players. Like, gamble on guys with upside at least. Like when you traded for Ryan Strome, like 7 years ago at this point, which is terrifying to say out loud.
Yeah.
You bought a guy as low as he possibly could be. He wasn't expensive, and you said, we're going to play you with Panarin. You'll figure it out. And they got 3 useful years out of him. Was that, putting them over the top? No. But they got useful hockey out of it. And that's really what I look at free agency as. Can we get useful hockey out of you? Do we have to overpay for it? And unfortunately, most of the time it's yes. Your goal needs to be no.
You take a look at the list and you go, okay, well, is Vlad Gavrikov at 7 years or whatever he's going to demand, is that going to fundamentally fix the Rangers defense? The answer is no. And on top of that, if you do that, you are further hamstringing not only, your cap for now, but also for the future. You're adding another defenseman to an already cluster mess of that blue line that they have going on right now. Like, I'm not in a vacuum. I'm not opposed to Vlad Gavrikov, but you are going to have to fundamentally change the way your blue line looks if you're going to do that. Just adding him to the lineup and, like, let's say letting Vakanainen go or whatever, like, yeah, that's good, but is that actually changing the way you defend? If you do that, the answer is not by a whole much. Like, that's not by a whole lot. You're going to have to restructure that blue line considerably. And then if you bring in Gavrikov, it's like, okay, well, that makes a lot more sense. But you can't just airdrop him in like he's playing Warzone and then just expect him to win like every single time. Like, that's not how that works. Like, if you're playing Warzone quads and you have one really good player and three players that are they don't know what they're doing, most of the time you're not going to win those games. Like, unless you are Connor McDavid-esque level of elite superstar level talent, you are like, it doesn't matter how good that one person is if everybody else is not good at what they do. It's just not going to happen.
No, and that's really the difference here. You look at the way Florida, Tampa Bay, Dallas, Colorado, etc. have aggressively tweaked their rosters over the years in relation to what the Rangers have done in that same window of time. And Dallas has been to 2 straight conference finals. They've been to 3 of the last 4, 3 of the last 5 Western Conference finals. Edmonton's been to 3 of the last 4. Florida has been to 3 of the last 4. Vegas has been to 2 of the last 4. There is a very recurring theme here. And not only do the Rangers not have the depth, they also don't have the high-end talent, which is like, that's an entirely different conversation for a different episode because you're not finding a Sasha Barkov in free agency. Connor McDavid will not be in free agency. Like, as much as people want to bang that drum, like, Jack Eichel probably not going to get there. McDavid's probably not going to get there. Like, as much as people want to bang that drum, like, oh, they could just get McDavid. They could get Eichel. Okay, if those guys get to free agency, something is very different. Something has changed fundamentally in the 24 months. Like, yeah, if the salary cap's $120 million 2 years from now, could I see Eichel going to free agency to see what the highest possible end outcome is? Could he get $19 million a year from like the Ducks? Maybe. If that's what you're looking for, sure. But if you want to keep winning, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to change things. The Oilers are humming along now. They finally got the third piece they need, along with McDavid and Draisaitl and Bouchard, to sustain a team. And the cap's going to go up, and they're going to be able to keep McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, and they'll figure it out. They will figure out how to keep getting bargain bin guys to fill in around their stars. Not only do the Rangers need to fix their depth, they also need stars who are good enough to win in the playoffs. They need new stars. They need depth. They need impact players up front. They need a partner for Fox. This team needs so much if it's going to be a contender. I think anyone talking themselves into the Rangers being Stanley Cup good next year is being a little too optimistic. I just don't think there's enough room there to turn it around in one season. The only argument, and I'll throw it to you on this, is the East is bad. If you want to argue the East is bad and you really only need to beat one good team to get to the Stanley Cup final, which seems to be the case, okay. I mean, we said that last year before the playoffs started. The only team that really gave you pause was Florida. Florida was the only team I felt the Rangers would probably lose to. That proved to be the case. I would have said the Tampa Bay and Florida this year. I don't think Carolina, the Devils, Washington, Montreal, Ottawa, or the Leafs particularly scary, but one or two teams better than you, that's still 2 teams you got to beat.
Yeah, and you got to beat them in a way that doesn't like ravage your team, especially with a team like Florida that loves to
muck it up.
Yeah, you could say that, especially when they're losing. And you know that's guys like Sam Bennett that I forget if I said this on the show or if I was talking to somebody else about it, but Sam Bennett is like the prime time Draymond Green. Yeah. Where if like Draymond Green went literally anywhere else, you would forget he's in the NHL. But because he's in a system in Golden State, like Sam Bennett is in Florida right now, that actively highlights every little minute detail of everything that they do well, they are incredible in their role on the team. Like if Draymond Green went to, I don't know, the Atlanta Hawks or even the Knicks or like whatever, yeah, they're still going to be good defensively, but they're not going to be the same Draymond that, you know, makes everybody pissed off in Golden State because of the connection, because Steve Kerr knows exactly how to deploy Draymond against who, in which situations, which buttons to push. And that is how you get the most out of guys like Draymond Green. Same thing with Sam Bennett. My man has scored, 50 points as his career high? And
51 this year.
And you're going to pay him $10 million? Yeah, good luck with that. You know, Like the armchair GM is going to, like, the websites where you can, be the armchair GM are going to be collapsing in a couple of years trying to figure out how to buy out or trade Sam Bennett. Like, just because Sam Bennett is incredible in Florida under a system, under a coach that knows exactly how to deploy him to get the absolute max potential that Sam Bennett brings to the table, doesn't mean your head coach will. No. Doesn't mean your situation in a new city, in a new place with a new system in place, with a brand new everything, is going to see the same amount of player that Sam Bennett is currently in Florida. He's one of those players. Like, there's certain players where you can drop them anywhere and they will perform well. Sam Bennett, at same vein as Draymond, is like, if you put them in a specific situation, they are the worst player to play against, like, just an absolute pain in the neck. Like, they will do, all the dirty things at the exact, the getting to the dirty areas and being a nuisance in front of the net. Like, they will do everything they possibly can in the perfect situations during the game to make that happen, because the coach knows when to deploy them. Another head coach in any other situation might not do that, or might not do that well. And then all of a sudden now it becomes a snowball of, oh, Sam Bennett's overpaid. Oh, he's not doing what he did in Florida. Oh, and then the spiral happens. With players like Sam Bennett, you have to be really careful, because he's going to demand a lot of money. And I mean, there's no way the Rangers have the cap space to do this, I guess, thankfully, because Sam Bennett's exactly the type of player that Drury might want to look at. And I'm not saying that Sam Bennett wouldn't make this team better, because he would, but not for $9-10 million, not for 51 points at $10 million.
And that's if he can even hit 51 points as a Ranger.
Like, you have to understand the tangibles and the intangibles of every player before you make that decision. Sam Bennett's a good player that will make this team better, but there's a limit, and that limit is definitely lower than $9 million a year.
Oh, for sure. The last thing I want to say before we wrap up and call today's show, the one thing you have working for you if you're a Rangers fan is the Rangers don't have a ton of flexibility. They can't really get themselves into new problems yet. They can make a trade or two and very easily make new problems for themselves, like a toddler running around unsupervised. But at the very least, they can't go out and bid crazy on Bennett or on Marchand at the opening of free agency. Brad Treliving probably will, but that's a different conversation for a different podcast. All right, that'll do it for this week's Liberty Blue. If you could be so kind, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Content will start to ramp up as we actually have Rangers hockey things to talk about over the next few weeks. We got the draft, we got free agency. Be sure to stick around. Good things happening, maybe.
Hopefully. Later.